Can you hear me better this time?
Yeah, yeah. Hey, how you doing?
Good, good. What's new with you, my friend? Where are you these days?
I'm down south doing some house sitting for my sister. Uh, it's you wanted to hear something glamorous, don't you? Well, I'm I'm in a tiger cage, riding
No,
a.
I like the hardcore reality of your reporting. So it's not about the glamour necessarily. I like the raw feed. So give it to me straight.
Well, yeah. I mean, after many months of being on the road, the reality of the situation is that I got to make some money, so I'm doing my best to bring in some cash so I can not only hit the road again. I'd like to get to California to get to some of the Trump rallies there, but if I'm going to get this documentary, a full length documentary, into film festivals, it means that I've got to do some hardcore editing, and I gotta have money to not only get it out to the film festivals themselves, but it'd be good if I was in LA for a bit, so I can try to get some meetings with people that have more power and influence, so that it's seen by more eyes, a bigger audience.
Yeah, I think that's wise. I mean, rodweber.com, is that where Weber with two B's? Is that where people can go and find a way to help fund your trip to California? I know that it's important what you're doing, and anything can help. And we're talking about someone who's given me some of my best information that's available out there as to what's going on actually. The real emotional climate and the reality of the situation at all of these events and rallies that have been since the very beginning of it. And I cannot wait to see it all come full circle. Maybe I can wait because it's very ominous, the story that's being told.
Obviously you're asking rhetorically, and yes, the website is rodweber.com with two B's. And yeah, anything helps. There is a donation button, although I've had a precious little time to do the updating, so it's usually just the latest photo or video, and I think the donation button's probably scrolled all the way down at the bottom. If not, there's still my GoFundMe campaign, was gofundme.com/flowersforpeace. And for those who don't know, I spent the better part of the year starting last July giving out flowers to presidential candidates, pretty much all of them, in exchange for a prayer for peace, which is let's say a non-denominational way of getting politicians to. They like to talk about religion, but it's a way to get them talking about peace.
Right, non-denominational and non-partisan.
Yes. Which is interesting because the more denominational you are, if you don't hear the larger context, such as a conversation like this, and you're just the peanut gallery on YouTube, which I'm not accusing anyone out there of being, but it seems as though it can really make people upset with you. The more that you try to stay neutral and report the facts as you see them, they see the facts as simply you stacking the cards against their candidate or whatever their position is.
I mean, I guess the game then becomes like, how do you present your work outside the immediate social media sphere, because the nature of social media has become one of essentially like trolling, one side versus the other.
Yep.
No matter what you do or what side you're on, you're inviting this phenomenon of people trolling each other on the internet, which really is an internet phenomenon. What's going on right now should be seen in large. Some of your clips need to go directly to mainstream media.
Yeah, it's a good example of what drives me bonkers about the social media phenomenon, or social media versus mainstream media. Let's call it that. Is, for instance, InfoWars, for those of you not familiar with it, is, they work in conjunction with the Alex Jones channel. It's essentially Alex Jones. He's ultra-conservative, right-wing conspiracy spouting. He's the sort of guy that gives the ideas to Donald Trump, the craziest ones, which, that Donald Trump might, put out there, such as, the Clinton murders. And I'm
Right.
I'm not saying that I mean, if you saw the latest Donald Trump thing, he's talking about, well, he committed suicide under very fishy circumstances. For the younger people out there, they have no recollection of these things. And I remember at the time thinking, yep, that does seem a little bit fishy. I do have a questioning mind, and so when people put conspiracies out there, the first thing to do, well, okay, we'll give it a thought. Just because when people label something a conspiracy, it's to say that we're dismissing it. And someone committing suicide under circumstances where there's an investigation of a presidential candidate, well, okay, let's put some thought in that. But again, it's been disproven, and that's decades ago now. And the Alex Jones channel it's the kind of thing that just gives, it's like fuel on the fire of these crazy things that Trump says. But the Alex Jones channel was out at the last rally in Lawrenceville, and they spent the entire time there pretty much under the radar. I guess a lot of people simply have no idea who they are, and they interviewed a lot of high school kids. And at the time, I wasn't really aware of the extent of what they were doing, because they're quietly walking among the crowd rather, and they hold out the microphone and basically let people condemn themselves with their own words. Even myself, to a certain extent, when I was interviewed, and he came up to me and I said, no, I'm not interested in that. And then I gave it a second thought and I said, you know what? It'll be interesting to see how you take me out of context. And so he's, oh no, of course, I'm not going to take you out of context. And we argued about that a little bit. And I said, no, I'm going to enjoy this. Let's have you take me out of context. And so we did the interview, and sure enough, he did. They cut the video after me saying a phrase to the effect of, well, and then we'll see what happens when Mr. Trump is president. And so those were the last words coming out of my mouth. And the larger context of that was extensive statements about inclusivity, and that just because things look bad right now doesn't mean that we're definitely going to have a President Trump. But it proved my point that they were simply there to take things out of context. And so here's the thing with this social media, when you're someone like Alex Jones or even TYT. TYT is they're on the liberal side, but they're both, they have very big internet audiences. And I think I don't want to say that it's dangerous, but there's something, well, in the case of Alex Jones, I think there is something dangerous there, because they present themselves as being, clear and unbiased, and because they're on the internet and they're just social media, that you need to watch it in full context, and they like to play the quote-unquote full clips. And I saw firsthand that they weren't playing the full clips. This is how they take you out of context. They let it roll, and then they cut you at the point which they feel as though you're nailed, where you've nailed yourself with your own words. Right.
And sure. But can't we, at least at this point, say for the record, that, Alex Jones and InfoWars is really nothing more than tabloid journalism gone conspiracy theorist. It's just like, instead of trying to find which Inquirer is more interested in finding which actors are cheating on their spouses or whatever the latest story of the week is, he's looking for things that can be made into sensational conspiracy theory, and it's entertainment. So, I mean, sure, it's dangerous for them to be doing it under the guise of information, but isn't also, the information we get, in most cases, somewhat fictional, sensationalized entertainment as well?
Absolutely, and that's again why I will say till I'm blue in the face that if anyone ever gets a chance to go out to any of the rallies of any candidate, especially go out to the rallies of someone who doesn't meet your ideology, because there's so much that you see and hear at these events that you don't get when you simply watch it through the filter of whether it's this radio show or what it's Fox News or CNN or whatever it is. There's so much more to be taken away by seeing it in person that it's impossible to convey. So I always say, get out and try to see these things when you can.
It's funny that they can take you out of context and make it look like, you sort of envision, like the inevitability of a Trump presidency. It's like, it wasn't last week you were like also taken out of context visually, or it wasn't last week, it was like, a few months ago, it feels like that, when you were the poster boy for Ted Cruz. You also had a run as being, John Kasich's mascot. You know what I
mean? Yeah. Which is, it's totally bonkers, man. I show up at a Ted Cruz rally with an American flag on my face, and I'm doing my best to quote unquote work undercover. Not so that I would be on the cover of the Boston Globe or the Wall Street Journal, although I was. I was, simply there to try to get the, real opinions of people and potentially get a good question in at one of his Q&As. I think Cruz is a little bit too sly and controlling to have allowed that to happen. But his wife Heidi Cruz essentially orchestrated my appearance on the cover of the Boston Globe, saying that, "Oh no, I need you to stand here in order to have your question with my husband." And I'm thinking to myself, well, this seems awkward. But of course, when I saw myself on the Boston Globe the next day, it was very clear that she just liked the idea of a man with an American flag on his face, on the cover of the Globe next to her husband. So
yeah, it's like we got our very own Duck Dynasty guy right here.
Right.
Well, we might be with this picture. We can win Florida, Louisiana, and who knows what else.
Well, and it's important for the people who don't know what I look like. I've got a very long beard, and on that day, I was wearing a camouflage hunting hat. So,
as opposed to like the Krishna robe with the fully flowered beard.
Yeah, well, I think it's a good look too.
I call that it's your Fletch on roller skates look.
Right, but
like right out vintage disguise that we learned from Chevy back in the day.
Oh yeah,
and that is kind of what it's like. I mean, you are in actuality like a modern day Fletch. You know what I mean? You are sort of taking on different looks and camouflages to get a realistic take on what's actually happening in the world.
It's interesting. I never thought of myself like that, but as soon as you say it, God damn it, I'll own that. Sure, why not?
Right, you're right. You're not working for a major paper, but you are press doing the same exact thing. You're using unconventional methods to get your stories, and I think it's important because, like, how many people could have gone as far as you did, like when you went to the anti-Muslim gun shop, and then ended up with that like cavalcade of like local militiamen who took you back to their sort of like headquarters and were blowing up Coke cans. And it's like, who goes that deep undercover? I ask you.
It doesn't seem like a lot of people are doing it these days. I wish they were. I guess you see it sometimes that Vice is hiring people like that. Maybe I should talk to them.
I think you're putting together a pretty good reel at this point. It's like anyone who can just walk in and has had FaceTime with every single candidate, pretty much, except like the ones we don't even know that were in the race to begin with.
Yeah, I missed Lincoln Chafee, and I think there might have been. Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, exactly. I mean, he dropped out before there was really even an opportunity. So, and that was. It was one of my big concerns in the early days there. How could I possibly see all 30 candidates within the first week before they all dropped out?
Right.
Kind of rhetorical.
Go ahead.
Oh, no, it's just kind of rhetorical.
Oh, yeah, but, I think it's weird. I was just noticing. It's like, there's still, that they still have to take votes on these, but now that both Cruz and Kasich are out of the game, that their names are still up there. Like, could everyone have been voting for Jeb or Marco this whole time? Like, even if they weren't in the race? I mean, it's ridiculous.
Well, yeah, and I mean, that's the thing where you even see that after, for instance, Bernie Sanders kills Hillary Clinton in one of the primaries, and she's still getting more delegates. So, I mean, that's democracy right there. I mean, the whole idea of super delegates is really. Whether it benefits Bernie or Hillary or the man on the moon, it's not democracy. I mean, the whole thing with the Electoral College, it's slightly undemocratic as well. It just it ought to be just pool all the votes together and go from there. But hey, what do I know? I guess the founding fathers, they wanted a republic more than a democracy, and we know that's really the case. So
yeah, I mean, maybe they should have like instead of a candidate to choose from that's not in the race anymore, perhaps like they could just have like a contested convention button. Like it's like, this is what I vote for, that we reassess the nominee, as like a direct. I do not vote for this guy, nor can I really vote for someone who's not in the race anymore. But can I vote to say that I don't support this nominee?
Well, and I think, in a sense, that was the idea of the superdelegates, that if the quote-unquote popular candidate had less of a chance by the time of the convention, yada yada, that the superdelegates could fix all of that, which is essentially the situation we have here, although it seems that the superdelegates have their heads up their tuchuses. And
actually, we have the opposite of that. The superdelegates have caused that. They've caused the problem.
Well,
they haven't.
Right.
Here to sort of like save us from ourselves. Seems like the people are fighting it out. It's it's closer than people realize where things stand without the influence of the superdelegates.
Well, it's a done deal that it should be a contested convention by their own rules at this standpoint. Bernie needs 90% of the remaining delegates in order to be uncontested, and this is all the mainstream media will tell you. And so it's like, oh, okay, well then Bernie can't go uncontested. But the fact of the matter is, the part they don't tell you is that Hillary needs 64%. She can't go uncontested, so it will be a contested convention. I mean, assuming they follow their rules. It's just...
Well, yeah, right. I mean, it should be interesting to see how it plays out, especially since she essentially declared victory within the past week.
Oh, did you see the video where they grafted her face onto one of these horror movies? I'm not familiar which one. Something about the...
No, but there was something terrifying about the way she said, like, I will be the nominee.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, they use that. Well, they use that footage, and basically, and put it in a horror movie, and the horror villain has now got her head on his body, and she's drowning the guy in a pool of water, and it's just that kind of, it's kind of how it feels, and it's weird actually. A lot of my friends that I thought of as liberal progressive people. Siding with Hillary. When people do that, it seems it's very confusing to me, because I'm thinking to myself, well, regardless of your progressive values, how can you get behind a person who's just totally eviscerating democracy? She's
become a symbol for everything that establishment is, that is against the people. She's the only one remaining in the race now who represents that, even if it's not a real truth. I mean, it probably is pretty true. It's like term limits exist to keep like a family from having this much influence over American politics for this long.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And yet there they are. It's their world, and people are becoming very suspicious of Clintons.
When you eviscerate democracy, you've got democracide. It's like, you're a samurai just, striking it down, cutting it down the middle, and the entrails spill out. And this is actually the show upcoming that Dave Tree put together. If anyone knows Dave Tree from Superpower, he put together the whole the Democracide show, which is coming up on June 4th, which should be pretty killer. Some folks like myself and Dave, our artwork, and there will be some music there. Hate to throw in a plug, but this is what it's all.
Yeah, absolutely. Come in, bring Dave with you if you want to talk about it more thoroughly as it gets closer. Everyone knows the art that that Dave does, but there's a lot of us out there. Aside from the documentary that I've been making, I also do the political art, and I've done that from years back. And I think regardless of whether that has an effect on how people vote, and it probably doesn't,
I think it's important to get symbols out there and get people thinking about these things, and I think art is an important way to do that. So,
Sure.
That
Well,
no,
let's see. Before we get up out of here, I know that I'm starting to creep into my time limit. I just wonder where so you're trying to get out to California, of course. There's not much left to do at this point except bear witness. I feel like this has been something that's on my mind. I wanted to get into this before we got off the phone, because you had said it before. You used the word horror. You described it like a horror movie, and that's the word that's been in my head, especially last night. And I got into this just a second ago, which is what inspired me to give you a call. Which is, last night I'm reading over a clip, and I don't know if you saw my post or not, but I know
Louis Farrakhan?
Jimmy Carter had come out and sort of denounced Trump and and the approach that he's using and the dangers of it.
Yeah.
And it's very amazing, of course, that Jimmy Carter at his right age of 91, having victoriously, as we know for now, having defeated cancer, is still with us and able to offer like us a legitimate opinion from someone who comes from like a bygone political era where you didn't get sucked into this type of nonsense.
Jimmy Carter's thinking like, what, you want to put up a wall, just one wall? Jimmy Carter's like, let's build a whole house.
Right, exactly. And now that people are talking about how porous the Canadian border is, it's like, well, like there you go. Like we got two walls to build on. And when are you going to talk about that? Right. And the thing I realized is it's going to take things like we haven't even hit the conventions yet. The political process that most people remember doesn't start till after that, and maybe the first thing they remember is the convention speeches. Something happens. That's usually when it announces that anything starts. And like in my mind, I have a flash forward images to one, like the desperation of the Democratic convention and the horror show of the Republican convention. And it's just going to be like I'm terrified thinking about watching what's going to come out of a Donald Trump convention. It's horrifying to me, and also the thought is horrifying that the Democrats may be ill-equipped to fight back that type of evil. And beyond that, it's like it's going to take everyone's best efforts, and that we have to rely on a 91-year-old ex-president that we're lucky is still with us, might be able to make some sense that day. And how much sense are we going to be able to make against all these points when everything seems to bounce off the man?
Well, we're not going to make much sense of anything that Donald Trump does. And I mean, that's the danger of the way that he's running his candidacy. When you have an American Idol style, voting process where it is an idiocracy and we want a wrestler for president. I'm not talking about Jesse Ventura. He's a smart guy. But when we have someone that is essentially acting like Vince McMahon and just wants to smash your head off the ropes, then, certainly we've subverted democracy.
And the sad thing is, Rod, is that what's happened now is that even people, it's not just people who you would define so simply as being, they're ignorant, they don't see. One thing that even people of large degrees of intelligence that I've come across are convinced that Trump represents a wrecking ball. You may not like him, but you can swing him into the current establishment, and you can break that up. Never has there been an opportunity. This is that political revolution, but not like, in the form of Bernie. A lot of people might prefer a Bernie-style one, but maybe that would never get the job done. Here's a wrecking ball this close to the machine, and it's, you can see it heading that way. It's like, hey, let it go. You know what I mean? Some people are actually starting to come around on that, and I'm just afraid of the peripheral damage. It's going to, with the nation emotionally, there's the political reality, and then there's the societal situation here, and there's friction here, and it's about ready to pop. And what we've started down that road of divisiveness is.
Well, it's not just the divisiveness. There's also the financial one. I mean, you look at what like Dodd-Frank, does to keep the big banks from doing evil, and Donald Trump seems to think that, oh well, no, that's okay. I'm going to take care of the banks. And I mean,
Elizabeth Warren held his feet to the fire on that just yesterday. But I feel as though like the even more scary thing is with our infighting and like allowing a Trump to become president and then watching what's happening here at home. We can't control ourselves at home, and we did this. It completely ruins our image across the world as something to respect or look at. They will see our warts on the surface, and they already do.
I mean, which I think is dangerous, and we don't want that to happen. But I think there is a real worry. If I hate to go back to the financial thing, but if he ruins our finances and therefore the world's finances, I mean, the divisiveness is going to be ramped up. I mean, think about the Dust Bowl, and I'm not saying that giant dust storms are coming, but I mean, if there are people starving on the street and setting fires to car and cats and dogs are raining from the skies. I mean that this is what comes from a complete and total financial meltdown. I mean when people talk about what year they imagined that America was great, it's like going back to 1957 with Beaver Cleaver, and the reality was that the bigger companies, the billionaires or the millionaires, they're getting taxed at like 90%. FDR's New Deal, which Bernie Sanders wants, and Donald Trump is. I mean, if he's that wrecking ball that you're talking about, he's really just going to wreck everything. He's going to.
That's it.
Yeah, he's going to knock it all down. It's disturbing. So.
And that's kind of what it is. And I feel like whatever we built for ourselves as the leader in matters of freedom. I feel like we will essentially be giving that up, and the ramifications will be felt for years. Rod, it's time to get out of here. Thank you so much for calling in, and by all means, let's talk again before the 4th.
Absolutely, my friend.
All right, be well, Rod.
All right,
Rod Weber, ladies and gentlemen.
Peace and love, everyone.
I'm a fumbling, fallen man, and I stumble when I can. Like a blind man in a barn, I'm a fumbling, fallen man.